Hello everyone and welcome back to the video. In today's video, we're going to be talking about Genesis Black, the Watch the Throne Last Chance qualifier. I need a bunch of talented people fighting for that final spot, but only one of them could take it. Who could it be? I mean, y'all probably already know from the thumbnail and title, but regardless, the top 16 finishers are going to be Larry Lur, Gangster Prince, D-Tier, and Pure Salt in 13th, Kirash, Frog, Loaf, and Cosmos in 9th. In 7th place, you're going to have Luis and Lima. 5th is Show and Wrath. 4th is Yuno, 3rd is Mutes, 2nd was Zomba, and winning the entire thing and qualifying for Watch the Throne was Apollo Kage. So the only top 8 seed that didn't end up getting into the top 8 is going to be Umeki. He ends up losing to Loaf in the winner's side, and honestly, that's not that bad considering the next day, Loaf also beat Mutes at a C tier, and it ended up going to Game 5, so just shout out to Loaf because he looked really impressive this weekend. And then you have Umeki ending up losing to Frog in the loser's side, so that's another Bayonetta win on a super top player, and it's a bit of an unfortunate placement for Umeki. It's only 17th place at a B tier, so it's not the end of the world, but this was probably the most important B tier of the entire year. You want to get into Watch the Throne, so it kind of sucks that your big underperformance happens at an event so important. So let's talk about a couple losers runs. 3 people end up placing 13th, and one of them ends up placing 9th. The 13th place finishers are going to be Pure Salt, D-Tier, and Gangster Prince, or Shave, but we're going to call him Gangster Prince because that's a good name. And starting off with him, he ends up beating D-Tier in a Game 5 set, then loses to Mutes in a Game 5 set. Very impressive that you're able to take Mutes to Game 5, by the way. Then he ends up beating Vegeta, Zenyu, and Lucky to get 13th place before losing to Wrath. And I know they play a multitude of characters. I'm pretty sure Terry was doing a majority of the lifting this time around, and I always love when Terry players do well because that character is broken and it allows me to push a narrative. A narrative that I usually don't push, though, is going to be Ice Climbers, and that's who D-Tier is going to be playing. Really nice loser run, winning 5 sets in a row after losing to Gangster Prince. They're going to beat Moose, Titus, Skeletal, Widera, and Shrew-Tick before losing to Frog, and again, they did it with Ice Climbers. Making a loser run with a character like Ice Climbers is really hard because Ice Climbers isn't a terrible character, but they just have some massive struggle matchups, and on a loser's run, you're just more likely to run into them because you got to play more sets, so big ups to D-Tier for that run. And then another not great character is going to be on Pure Salt because he was going to be playing Donkey Kong for a majority of this, which is pretty crazy. He ends up losing to Zomba in a Game 5 set. I don't know if he was playing DK when he took Zomba to Game 5, but again, taking Zomba, who's potentially a top 10 player in the world, to Game 5 is super impressive. Doing it with DK is next level stuff, but then he ends up beating Baron, Akko, and MFA, who got 2nd place at that C tier that I mentioned earlier on before losing to Luis. So insane run from Pure Salt. Even if he only used Donkey Kong a little bit, he still took a game off of Luis with Donkey Kong, and doing that is just a feat that most people can't accomplish in this game. And then finally, you're going to have Frog. I already talked about him earlier because he got that really nice win on Umeki, but he was also able to beat Surge, Noria, and D-Tier, only losing to Kirash and Yuno. Just another solid result from Frog. He, and like other Bayonetta players, has just been doing so well these past couple months, and I think that's a trend that's only going to continue going up. I've mentioned that C tier twice now, so I feel like I should just briefly mention it. The C tier is going to be Dragon House Monthly, and in 4th place, you're going to have Lofi, ends up beating Mutes, like I already mentioned, as well as Karama, so massive props to him for that one. You're going to have Luis finishing in 3rd. You're going to have MFA finishing in 2nd with a monstrous run in the winner's side. He looks so dominant, and then you're going to have Yuno winning the entire thing. So just thought I should mention that. And before we move on to the top 8, I want to highlight the other 13th and 9th place finishers that I just haven't mentioned yet, and that's going to be Larry Lur in 13th, and then Cosmos and Kirash in 9th. Now, for Larry Lur, there's not a ton to say about his run because he just loses to the people that he's supposed to lose to and beats the people that he's supposed to beat, but he does manage to take Apollo Kage to Game 5, so big props to him for that. When we were doing the prediction for this video, we knew that was going to be a bit of a tricky set for Apollo Kage because Larry's just good at the Snake matchup. He's got that brawl experience, and that proved to be true, but big props to Apollo Kage for actually being able to overcome Larry Lur because Larry Lur is one of those players. I feel like the better you are at Smash Ultimate, the better that Larry Lur is going to do versus you, and those are always the scariest players. And then you have Larry Lur beating Sandfall in the loser side before unfortunately falling to Lima, just a little bit unlucky that you got Lima in your path, to be honest. And then our 9th place finishers of Cosmos and Kirash, you're going to have Cosmos making a pretty big upset over Luis. Again, Game 5 set. There was a lot of Game 5s this tournament, and then he ends up losing a Game 5 set to Mutes right after that. Very winnable. I could have seen the timeline where Cosmos got into the winners finals of this tournament, maybe even the grand finals, maybe even won the thing, because if he beat Mudace, and he definitely could have, he would have had Show, and I think Aegis does pretty good into Game & Watch and Meta Knight, so there was definitely a possibility for Cosmos to make an absolute run this tournament, and he still made a pretty good run. 9th place is still very solid because he ends up losing to Lima in the loser side, so really good losses from Cosmos, and he gets a nice win over Luis. Great event from him. And then you're going to have Kirash in 9th place. He makes a massive upset over Lima, one of the biggest of the entire tournament, and then he has the misfortune of fighting Apollo Kage in the winner's side, ends up losing that one, and then he ends up falling to Luis as well. But that's another weekend where Kirash has performed really well. I think this guy is a major threat. If he keeps going to events, he's going to keep getting good results because he's just a super talented player. We're just going to have to see if he's able to continue traveling. Also, just before I forget to mention it, shoutouts to Lucky for getting 17th place with Plant, and shoutouts to Shrutik for getting 17th place with the Inkling, because those characters should not be placing that high. Now let's get to the top 8. Our 7th place finishers are going to be Luis and Lima. Starting off with Luis, he was the 7th seed. He placed 7th. Nothing super crazy there, though his path was a little bit dramatic. He ends up beating Surge, Nexus, then loses to Cosmos Game 5, then beats Winter Please Call Me, Pure Salt, and Kirash before losing to Yuno. And Yuno has been a player that he has been struggling with a lot. He's lost his last 6 sets versus Yuno. Yuno is just kind of insane at the Palutena. You even had Luis bringing out the Sephiroth, not really to any great effect, but I think in the future he's probably going to continue going that route. I doubt with Sephiroth, but I could see the Fox coming out. I'm honestly surprised he hasn't tried the Fox. I'm sure he has his reasons for that. Maybe the Dr. Mario comes out. I know he used to play Doc. I saw he was trying a little bit of Rob this weekend, and none of those characters do amazing into Palutena, but when you're down 0-6, you definitely got to try something, and I like that Luis was trying something with the Sephiroth there, and even though it didn't work out this time, that doesn't mean that it's not going to work next time, and I'm really excited to see Luis at Watch the Throne. Like I said earlier on in the video with Larry Lur, I think the better you are, the better Luis is going to do versus you, and he has a serious shot versus amazing players like Aquila, like Mia, because Palu does well into those characters as well. So getting a little bit ahead of myself, but just excited for Luis at Watch the Throne. And our other 7th place finisher is going to be Lima. A little bit of an underperformance because he was the 4th seed, but a top 8 is still a top 8. As I said earlier on, he gets upset by Kirash, but still beats Rosario, Larry Lur, and Cosmos to be able to get into the top 8. And once in the top 8, he ends up losing to Wrath, and you can't feel too bad about that one. It's a bit of a tricky matchup for Bayonetta, and also Wrath is just an insanely good player, so a little bit of an underperformance from Lima, but honestly, not the end of the world. In 5th place, you're going to have Wrath and Show, starting off with Wrath, and I know I say this every time I talk about this player, but one of the hidden bosses of the game, he is so talented. He was able to pick up wins on Nexus, Gangster Prince, Loaf, and Lima, only losing to Yuno and Zomba, and he ended up taking both players to Game 5 as well. And the more that we get to see of Wrath, the more confident that I am that this is a player that has the potential to be top 10 in the world, I'm going to say, because he's playing Sonic. You can do anything with this character. Sky is really the limit. The only thing that's going to be holding you back is your skill, and Wrath has a whole lot of that, and apparently Sonics has been coaching him as well, which is only going to help. I really think Wrath is going to be one of the future players of this game if he wants to. He's going to have to commit to going to a bunch of events and getting that practice in, but if he does that, he is going to be a main stage of the scene. I can guarantee you that. And then you're going to have Show in 5th place, who had the run of the tournament, in my opinion. He was able to beat Zerx, Shrutik, and Loaf, only losing to Mudace and Yuno, using a combination of Game & Watch and Meta Knight. And it's always nice to see Meta Knight at the top level. Not a super popular character for a multitude of reasons, but he does hit incredibly hard, and Show's conversions were phenomenal. If he didn't SD pretty much every game versus Mudace, there was a very real possibility that he won that set, but Meta Knight is live by the blade and die by the blade, and honestly, I wouldn't have it any other way because it makes that character super fun to watch. In 4th place, you're going to have Yuno. 3rd place, Mudace. Now, Yuno, it's been a little bit since we've seen him in the top 8 of one of these big events. He hasn't been performing as well as of late, at least to his standard, because obviously he's a very talented player, and he was able to get a bunch of solid wins this tournament, including Winner Please Call Me, Wrath, Frog, Luis, and Show, only losing to Zomba twice. And I don't know if I've ever mentioned this on the channel before, so I'll just mention it now. Yuno does not just play Palutena anymore. He has added Steve and Aegis to the roster. Aegis didn't really do too much this tournament. He tried it versus Zomba, and it didn't end up taking a game, but I like that he tried it out because I think that's a solid matchup for him. And then he ends up using the Steve versus Show to be able to win that set 3-0, but the rest, at least from what I know, was all Palutena, and he was able to still get a bunch of really solid wins there. Also, he was able to win that C tier that I mentioned earlier on, Dragon House Monthly, beating players like Tarek, Lucky, Luis, and MFA twice. So it seems like, was really back on his A game this weekend. And I hope we get to see him playing like this more consistently because I really like watching top level Palutena. You have to get super creative with this character to make her work. And players like Luis and, Jagaimo, they're just such a treat to watch because they just be doing the most wild stuff ever and it ends up working out. In third place, you're going to have Budace, and there's honestly not a ton to say about his run. He was able to get wins on Titus, Gangster Prince, MFA, Cosmos, and Show, only losing to Apollo Kage and Zomba. He's been trading sets back and forth with Apollo Kage. They've always been super competitive. And then Zomba, he has actually never beaten Zomba, which is something that I was a little bit surprised by. It's a 4-0 record for Zomba, so big ups to Zomba for that record because being able to beat Budace every time you play him is incredibly difficult. And the only thing I really want to say about Budace's run is you can tell that this guy has been labbing constantly. Some of the conversions that he's been pulling off are very impressive. So practice has definitely been paying off for Budace, and even though it didn't get him the win this time, there's going to be plenty more tournaments. And our grand finalists are Zomba in second and Apollo Kage in first. And Zomba, yet again, one spot away from qualifying at an event. It is tragic how many times this has happened. Zomba must have taken like a monkey spot or something. You become top 10 in the world, but you don't get into any invitationals. And he still had a pretty solid run. He was able to beat Pure Salt, Lucky, twice, Wrath, Mudace, and Apollo Kage in the first set of grand finals, only losing to Apollo Kage twice. Under any other context, this is just a solid run from Zomba. But this isn't no normal context. The Watch the Throne spot on the line, and he just, again, falls one spot short. So unfortunate. But honestly, the next time there's a massive invitational, he's probably going to be top 5 in the world and is going to get automatically invited anyway. So hopefully this isn't something he's going to have to worry about in the future. But our big winner of the event, Apollo Kage, he was able to get wins on Waidara, Larry Lur, Kirash, Zomba twice, and Budace, only losing one set to Zomba in the grand finals. And I'm so happy for Apollo Kage. He played exceptionally at this tournament, and his style of Snake is one of my favorites to watch. For all those people that say Snake is a lame and campy character, first of all, you're not watching him right. But second of all, just watch Apollo Kage play because he be scrapping. He does not care. He plays this character like they are a brawler and he makes it work. And he just looked exceptional at this tournament. Super excited to see him out Watch the Throne. I think he should do some major damage to that bracket. And I thank you all for watching. I hope you enjoyed the support. It's been absolutely unreal as of late. If there's anything I left out, got wrong, or if you just want to say hi, leave a comment down below. Be sure to sub while you're down there. And I'll see you all in the next one. Bye-bye.